Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada ki jai. So, moving right along. So thank you all for coming. And I just especially thank Indranila Mani and her beautiful daughter Shamali for bringing some food for us. Nice spiritual food. Thank you very much. So today is a special day, first of all, because we're alive. And also because today is what we call the disappearance day of two great souls, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Gadadhar Pandit. So I'm going to explain very briefly who they are and what a disappearance day is. In spiritual circles, there's the understanding that we are spiritual. We're not merely bio-machines. We are actually eternal souls. That's what it means to be spiritual, to understand that you are spirit. And so Therefore, in spiritual circles, when a great soul, someone who self-realized, someone that actually understood themselves to be an eternal being, when they pass away from this world, we don't say that they merely died because, of course, it's the body that dies, not the person. And therefore, in India, it's called Tirobhava. Uh, Tirobhava means to disappear from our sight, that someone disappears from our sight. And they call it also Tirobhava Mahotsava, a great festival, because it's, in a sense, although we miss a person, a great soul who has passed from this world, at the same time we celebrate their victory, their glory in having lived a successful spiritual life and moving on to their certain elevation. So, therefore, we say disappearance date. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we'll do it chronologically. Gadadhar Pandit was a personal associate, intimate, actually childhood friend of Lord Chaitanya's, which means he was born at the end of the 1400s. And of course, Lord Chaitanya is accepted within Gaudiya Vaishnava circles as Krishna's, latest, greatest appearance in this world. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says one of the most famous verses from the Gita, which every Indian knows. As soon as you start saying it in Sanskrit, they all join in. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanama dharmasya tadatmanang sajamyam, which means that whenever dharma, the sacred principles of life, whenever dharma is waning, collapsing, yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata, and adharma, which is the opposite, the principles of, in other words, when people act not according to noble principles of fairness and compassion and for the good of themselves and others, but when people act simply out of lust or greed, envy, and they act destructively and harmfully, that's called adharma. So the Gita says, abhyutanam adharmasya. It's actually, I'll just take a little linguistic detour here just for a second, because Sanskrit is so interesting. It's abhi in Sanskrit is a prefix which has a sense of something which is direct, like even direct against something, and then ut is up, and tanam is from the Sanskrit root stand, our English word stand. Sanskrit's an Indo-European language, and so abhyutanam, literally when something is standing up or rising in a sort of in an aggressive way. That's literally abhyutanam. And so an adharma is growing in an aggressive way, adharma. Then Krishna says, tadat manang sajamiham, then I manifest myself in this world. It's sort of like a service contract that Krishna has with the universe, a warranty that where he comes and makes sure things are going well. So, according to this understanding, Krishna appeared about, 1486. That's 500 and, still do the math at my age, 29 years ago. 529 years ago, Lord Chaitanya appeared as Krishna, and and started this whole movement, which is spreading all around the world now, of Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. And one of his dearest childhood friends was Gadadhar Pandit, who was a great soul, and who accompanied Lord Chaitanya and participated in all of his activities during his life of teaching, reteaching. It said that Krishna taught Bhagavad Gita, but people didn't quite get it, so he came again to again explain it and to show by example how to be a servant of the Lord, how to serve God. Because in this narcissistic age we live in, of course, people would rather be God, although if you look at the job description, I personally don't know anyone on earth that's really up to it. Mm-hmm. So it's like that movie, what was it called? Bruce Almighty, the Jim Carrey movie. That kind of like says it all. So that's Gadadhar Pandit, and then Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born around, I think, 1838 and passed away in 1914. He was, of course, born within the British Empire, just a few years actually before the British Crown formally took over management of South Asia from the British East India Trading Company. It's amazing that Ayn Rand, of course, would have loved this, but that for over a century, a private corporation actually managed a good portion of the world. But anyway, so Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born in that British ruled India, and he was born in West Bengal, which is significant because that was the capital. That's where the British first arrived, and that's where they stood up their initial base in India, and that became their capital in India, Calcutta, and sort of their Asian capital. And Bengali people in general are kind of known in India for having certain artistic or intellectual abilities. And so, because of the British presence and because of the natural abilities of the people there, there was a significant group of young Indians who were educated, who were intellectual, who were sort of negotiating this tension between their loyalty to their own families and their own history and tradition, and at the same time wanted to be modern and were kind of or very seduced by the new technologies. You have to understand, if you're living in a little village and just somewhere out in India, you're living in just some little village with no electricity, and suddenly here come the British with their printing presses and railroads and great universities like Oxford and Cambridge. So all this science and industry and intellectual firepower, it was pretty overwhelming, actually, for a lot of young people in India, especially, even older people. And so there was a group called the Bhadraloka, which kind of means, the good people. But they were a group of, they were Indians, many of them young, all of them educated, intellectual, were kind of at the forefront of this experience of trying to deal with these two worlds. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a member of that group, and he knew all the leading people of his time, all the great intellectuals you read about in history books. And so he became a great devotee, a great follower of Lord Chaitanya. Bhaktivinoda also, in his material career, he was a high court judge. He was highly educated, became a judge. He was a great poet. I think you have to say a great poet. And he wrote poetry in 3 different languages. So try that. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, I can find a restaurant, in French or something, but he actually wrote serious poetry in 3 languages, which were English, Bengali, and Sanskrit. So another quality of his was that he was extremely humble, despite his high position and material success and spiritual success. He was very humble, very self-effacing. He wrote his poetry often is sort of lamenting that his own faults, but not in a way that comes off as tacky and like making a show of humility. It's very deep and powerful. And historically, he sort of revived Lord Chaitanya's movement, because over time, in the centuries intervening between, say, 3 centuries between the time that Lord Chaitanya left this world and Bhaktivinoda Thakur appeared in it, Lord Chaitanya's mission had really fallen on hard times, in the sense that it was misunderstood, it was sort of hijacked by unscrupulous people, and all kinds of things happened. So when all the dust cleared, let's say in the mid-1800s, there was not much going on. It was pretty much was near extinction. And so he very powerfully revived it and turned it into a vibrant, relevant movement. And then his son, Bhaktisiddhanta, of course, spread it all over India, and even made initial attempts to bring it to the West and Europe. And then Bhaktisiddhanta's disciple, you could say the grand disciple of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, is Prabhupada, our own teacher and the one who started the Krishna consciousness movement. So there's this amazing lineage. And so today is disappearance day of both Gadadhar Pandit and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And now I also got a request for a topic today, which I'll read from one of our distinguished guests here, Emily, Dr. Emily. And it's a really good topic, and I want to tie it into Bhaktivinoda Thakur Get out here, pundit. And here, so here's the topic. Uh, in our culture, Vaishnava culture, it's always stressed not to commit offense, not because when you're living with and working with, let's say, spiritual people, you don't want to offend them because inevitably, as human beings, we get impatient, we become irritated. Like, why the heck did you do that? And yet, so there's in a sense, there's a potential in a spiritual community to commit heavier offenses because you may offend someone who's actually really a spiritual person, and that's not a good thing. So at the same time, so here's the question, the topic was as it was posed. So that's called aparad. Aparad means offense. So I'd like to understand this topic of offense better and how it relates to criticism. How can a critical person overcome such tendencies so as not to wreck the potential for advancement, while at the same time not being a passive, silent doormat? What do you do for a living? I'm a doormat. So how can we actually overcome the tendency to criticize and defend? And I was saying, like, unfortunately, there's all these really fun things you can't do, like criticize others. So how do we overcome this tendency? So I'd like to talk about it. I started with the dictionary, which predictably was not so helpful. But in the dictionary, the sort of mediocre Google dictionary, the definition of offense is quite subjective. To break a rule or law, so there can be like illegal, like you committed an offense, like a driving offense or something. To violate what is judged to be right or neutral. To violate what is judged to be right, or natural, right or natural. So at the same time, we do see real flaws out there, and sometimes we see injustice. Sometimes we see people acting in ways that are harmful to themselves or others. Like if you see someone about to fall off a cliff, and you say, well, I don't want to tell him what to do. Yeah, but he's about to fall off a cliff. Or what if you see someone, for example, acting abusively by speech or in some way toward other people? So the idea of just don't be judgmental, it sounds good. And there is such a thing as being judgmental in the sense of criticizing too much or really like just obsessively criticizing others. And I always say that some of the most judgmental people I've ever met are the ones that tell everybody not to be judgmental. They never seem to note that irony. So how can you be a rational human being? How can you see what's really out there? Don't be blind. Don't be a doormat. See the truth, even speak the truth when it's necessary to prevent significant harm or to promote significant good. How can you do all that and yet not commit offense? So that's the topic. I made a few little notes here. I usually don't, but I thought since we're filming, I don't want to end up speechless. There's a connection between our own purity and our ability to inoffensively criticize. In other words, one can speak the truth in an offensive manner. For example, let's say I see someone actually doing something wrong. Let's say someone is typical thing for Santa Monica, I'm in a crosswalk and someone doesn't stop. That's happened to me probably about 50 times, and every single time it's someone in an expensive car. But anyway, so let's say someone's doing that, so therefore I, shout out profanities and take out a sledgehammer, I carry my, smash the person's windshield. I mean, clearly, someone can do something wrong and you can say something, but it can be done offensive. So the more my heart is still tainted by envy, the more there's still envy in my heart. And envy means that it makes me unhappy to see someone else succeed, and it makes me happy to see someone else fail, because I think in some perverse way that it's promoting me. I mean, as ugly as it sounds, it's kind of bad. I mean, I think it's a question of degree. It would be very hard for someone to say that I am absolutely free from even the tiniest trace amount of envy. That would be a stretch for anyone, I think, to say that I mean, I'm absolutely free of it. But of course, we can have it in small amounts, and we control it so we don't offend other people. But the more we truly are only acting for the good of another person, there's no pride, there's no envy. It's truly, there's nothing in the heart but love and beneficence. Actually, benevolence, I should say, wishing the good. There's nothing but benevolence and true compassion or kindness in the heart. And we say, but then again, generally people who are truly free of, I guess, malevolence is the opposite. People who are truly free of malevolence and envy and pride, because of that purity, they will also see more clearly. Krishna draws a connection in the Bhagavad Gita between the purity of the heart and the mind and one's understanding of reality. In other words, it's just like water. If water is pure, it's transparent. And to the degree water is impure, it's generally not transparent. There are, of course, certain, really nasty toxins that somehow don't disturb the transparency of the water. But still, in general, the more that water is polluted, the less transparent it is. So the more our hearts and minds are pure, the more transparent they'll be. And therefore, we will see how to speak in a way that doesn't offend the person, and yet speak the truth. And Krishna does say also in the Gita that there's an austerity of speech. Austerity means acting for what is best and not just out of self-indulgence. Like, for example, I may want to shout at someone just because I'm angry and my lower self is rearing its head. But I perform the austerity of self-control. I realize, no, that's not a good thing to do. It's not appropriate. It's not good for me. It's not good for the other person. And therefore, I control myself. So here the word austerity is being used, and it's a very common word in all these spiritual texts. It basically means that you do not indulge your immediate desire based on a higher understanding that to do so, to indulge yourself, would not ultimately benefit you or other people, and could even harm yourself or other people. And therefore we control ourselves and we give up that impulse. And so that's what I mean by austerity. So Krishna says that austerity of speech is to speak, first of all, what is true, but also what is beneficial. For example, I could tell you something like how many towels are hanging in my bathroom and what colors they are, and I don't know, for some eccentric reason someone might find that interesting, but so it would be true, but it's not necessarily going to make the world a better place. And there's all kinds of trivia you could speak. So it should be not only true, satyam in Sanskrit, but hitam, also beneficial. We should say things that are not only true, but also beneficial, and priyam, pleasing. A little bit of sugar makes the medicine go down. So, so there's a situation where someone may do something wrong, and even something which is not merely wrong, but is harmful to themselves or others. And yet, if my motivation, if my urge to speak, if my righteous anger is really self-righteous anger, and I'm speaking to indulge my own envy and pride, then even in speaking the truth, I may injure myself, just as I may injure others, because I am. You see the point? There's a sense in modern culture which, I suppose technically we could imagine a crasser, more vulgar culture, but you'd have to think about it for a while. So in the modern world, it's like this gotcha thing. If you made a mistake and I caught you, then I can just shout it from the rooftops. And you, by virtue of the mistake you've made or done something wrong, you've been stripped of all dignity, you deserve no respect, nothing. You should just be annihilated publicly because you did something wrong. And by doing that, we are protecting the public from, it's transparency or something. I mean, obviously some truths have to come out, but there is a sense in the modern world that if you catch someone doing something wrong, then they're just fair game for anything. So, also another point I wanted to make is that we have to make allowance for imperfection. In other words, some mistakes are not really destroying the world, and we all make mistakes. I have a friend that said, I only made one mistake in my life. One time. I thought I was wrong, but I wasn't. He was joking. So we all make mistakes, and also how should I put it? It's like, people are at different levels spiritually. So, for example, let's say a child is playing, and the child is just not so competent. Maybe the child's trying to, assemble something, some toy, or trying to play music on a little keyboard or something. And so you barge in and push it. Get out of the way, kid. You don't know how to do that. I'll do it. The point is that children have to give it space and time and encouragement to gradually learn things. And so there's a sense in which people are spiritual children. And there are mistakes that people make, but it may be a case where, let's say, God is taking care of that person or someone else is responsible, and so it's just not my job to barge in and attack that person, but just to give them space to learn and to grow on their own way. It may not be my duty. So the real question sometimes, especially say in a spiritual community, one question you have to ask yourself is it really going to please God? Is it going to please Krishna if I criticize that person? Because ultimately, whatever I do, I'm trying to please Krishna. I'm trying to please God. So is it really pleasing to God that I intervene here? Is it a duty that God has given me to intervene? And how significant is the harm? And obviously, if you see someone about to do something really harmful, sometimes you got to just step in. But in cases more where you just see people like, I don't like the way you're doing your job, or this or that, is it really my duty? And you have to ask, and you have to be convinced in your heart, in your purest heart, not in let's say in my passion or pride, but I have to somehow or other find that pure part of me which is there, and ask, is this really beneficial? My intervention, is this really a duty I have? Does God want me to do this? And by doing it, am I actually acting for the good of everyone, including myself? So there's another point which is totally not understood nowadays, I think. Well, it's understood to some extent. To some extent, the modern world understands it. And I don't mean to take this point too far to an irrational extreme. It's just one factor in many. And that is the necessity of preserving legitimate hierarchies. Despite the very powerful egalitarian ethos of our society, the fact is that there are natural hierarchies. For example, in the press, there are certain ways that one could, say, criticize the president, where even people who don't support the president would think you're going too far. You're just destroying all the dignity of the office. And there are certain natural structures in life. For example, parents. Parents may make mistakes, but if the parents are, let's say, overly humiliated or overly castigated, even by their children, it really starts to be an attack on certain natural forms or hierarchies in life. We're not talking about parents, let's say, who are totally incompetent and the children need urgently to be taken away, put in a foster care home or something. But let's say just a mistake. So there's the balance of speaking the truth, not allowing abuse. Certainly, we're not talking about abuse here. We're not talking about harmful abuse. We're just talking about mistakes. And so there's a sense, and of course, if you look at the distinction between the West and the East, who was it? Kipling said, East is East and West is West, never the twain shall meet. He obviously never watched India's Got Talent on TV, but if you go back in history, if you go back in history, even certainly the time of Alexander, and even before Alexander, I mean, really the earliest systematic documented contacts between East and West, you could say maybe, are going back to the great battles between Greece and Persia 2,500 years ago. And there's always this mutual perception that from the point of view of the West, they really prize individuality and don't trust anyone. And that's why democracy, of course, arose in Athens. And so from the point of view of the West, the people in the East were obsequious. There was like bowing and scraping to their leaders. They were mindless followers. And so the West had that opinion of the East. This is going back thousands of years. And for the people in the East, the Westerners were kind of like barbarians. They were crude. They just had no respect for things that should be respected. And so anyway, you see this very clearly because the sort of like the border between East and West in ancient times was, of course, Greece and Persia. And they were battling each other for centuries. You know, the Marathon, the Great Battle of Marathon. If you watch I'm sure none of you would ever miss a Brad Pitt movie. And so I'm sure you saw that thing about Troy. So anyway, and then of course with Alexander, so there has to be a balance. Obviously, one can be obsequious. You can go too far and just be so submissive and humble and respectful of authority that just, that it just creates havoc and all kinds of evil things happen in the world. On the other hand, one can be so self-righteous and individualistic that you just become a menace to civilization. And you just destroy the very principle of respect and dignity in the world. And we're just left with, something worse. So, getting back to the topic of offense, and just to wrap this up, I would say the main principle, which sort of is the framework for the other principles, is to understand oneself and to understand everyone else as a spiritual being. And to understand, as much as we might like to be God ourselves, we haven't really got the skill set. And the idea of longing to become God by meditation is kind of, you can't be serious. It's like, first of all, it involves all kinds of just crazy philosophical problems. Like, if you're God, how did you get in this mess? I mean, how could God, because everyone agrees in terms of certainly this Vedic culture, that at the present time we are to some extent covered by illusion. We are not seeing everything that's out there. We're not in perfect consciousness. God is actually everywhere. We ourselves are souls, eternal souls. We're not really seeing ourselves. We're not seeing other people as they ultimately really are, past the body. And we're not seeing God. And so therefore, to some extent, as Krishna says, abritam jnanam etena, that we are covered. Consciousness is covered by kama rupa, by our selfish desire. Same thing Buddha taught, really. The Four Noble Truths. You're suffering because you're selfish. Stop being selfish and you won't suffer. If you want to stop being selfish, become a Buddhist, join the program, sign up. So it's true. I mean, it's something which was understood not only by Buddha, but by all the teachers, that the more we are selfish, the more we are lusty, greedy, and all that, vain, the more consciousness shrinks. It just covers consciousness. And the more we become pure, loving, selfless, the more consciousness is uncovered, or you could say discovered, and we see things as they really are. So when we see things as we are one with God, but we are also less than God because we're not infinitely conscious like God. And so it's natural that we serve God as the hand serves the body. Krishna says in the Gita, Mama Ivangsa Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, that the eternal living being is part of me. And so as the hand is part of the body, let's say the hand goes on strike, I'm not going to give the food to the mouth. Why does the mouth get to taste all the food? Why does the stomach get to digest? I'm just going to. So even if you have the most powerful hand in the world, like you could have you can pulverize, granite in your bare hands or something, but still, you can't eat. Hands don't digest. That's not what they do. The hand feeds itself by feeding the body. That's how hands feed themselves, because the hand is part of the body. So in the same way, we please ourselves. We nourish ourselves by pleasing God, because we're part of God. And so in the act of pleasing God, we are actually pleasing ourselves, and we are actually, it's like watering the root of the tree. God, you could say, or Krishna, is the root of all existence. And so there's a funny word in Sanskrit. Sanskrit is full of puns and jokes, but people don't get it. They think it's all like very somber and grave in Sanskrit. But anyway, so in like one name for a tree is a padapa, which means a foot drinker. Trees drink through their feet, their roots. And so you can say, no, that's not democratic. We should give equal amounts of water to the branches, the twigs, the leaves. It's more egalitarian. It's the zeitgeist. But trees don't drink that way. Trees drink through their roots. And so if we, by serving God, we're actually serving ourselves because we're part of God. So if in every act we just consider, and Krishna says that in the Gita, Jet Karoshi, whatever you do, Tat Kurusha Mararpana, make that an offering to me. So if we understand our lives correctly as an offering to God, then before criticizing, we should think, is this really a service? And it may be. It may be there are times when we are called upon, as they say, to speak truth to power. The typical thing, the Old Testament prophets speaking truth to power. We may be called upon. God may actually want us to step forward because the truth has to be spoken. But we should really verify and make sure, check our motives. Why am I doing this? Am I doing it really because I'm convinced in my rational, pure side, not my passionate, impulsive side, angry side, but my pure spiritual nature is telling me that Krishna really wants me to do this. This is really service. And I'm not taking pleasure. I'm not happy because I'm criticizing someone else or putting someone else down. It's really just a service that I've been called upon to do. So in that way, one has to be satisfied in one's own conscience. You have to make sure you're not causing more harm than good. You're not, let's say, for a debatable benefit. Will the criticism do its job? If I make this criticism, will I make the world better, or is it just something I want to get it out? Is it really going to improve the world? Is it going to make my life worse, someone else's life worse? So in that way, it just has to be a pure, clear-headed, beneficial act where you're sure that it's really your duty. And of course, in cases of serious abuse and significant harm, then obviously, if you can stop it, you have to stop it. So, any questions on these points? Yes.
So, I was thinking, well, in Christianity, you have the Pope that supposedly
Catholicism.
is infallible in Catholicism, right? And then, like in Vedic culture, we have the spiritual master who is a representative of God, and we believe that God speaks through them. So my question would be like, so there is a hierarchy, and which we have to respect. Now, in the spiritual master, what would it be seen as offensive if the disciple disagrees with some instructions or some ways that he may have to in managerial ways, right?
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Prabhupada made clear in his own teachings that the spiritual master is speaking, or the guru is speaking infallibly, if and only if the guru is simply humbly repeating what Krishna said, or let's say there are certain sources we have, Shastra, we can say scripture, that we accept as sacred texts. And so in those areas, the guru, if he's just repeating a recognized authority, then we accept it. Prabhupada never claimed, in fact, he disclaimed, that a spiritual teacher is just infallible in every area, even like, I think it's going to rain tomorrow. What? I don't think so. No, I'm the guru. It's going to rain tomorrow. And this creates kind of all kinds of comical situations. I mean, that's, who needs Monty Python when you're part of a religious organization? Mm-hmm. But so you get these.
Against a comment.
Yeah, I mean, so it's really important that a spiritual teacher, a guru, know their own boundaries. In other words, I'm a guru. That doesn't mean automatically that I'm an expert financial advisor, or marital advisor, or manager. So the problem is, if a guru thinks that because I'm a guru, therefore everything I say is true about everything, It's they just don't understand their job. And it's almost like there's something ironic about it, because if you're surrounded by people who are always like telling you, oh, you're so great, and then you start to believe your press, and so yeah, and you can become a little loopy. So yeah, so it's very important. So a guru should not, how should I say, exploit that position or misunderstand the position and claim that all of his or her statements on every subject are infallible when they're actually not.
So I guess maybe we would have to distinguish between spiritual advice and maybe practical material advice.
Yeah,
Two separate things from a spiritual leader.
they are different, and I know myself just by experience, Guru School of Hard Knocks, that when you're advising people, even people who are disciples, it's you sort of talk and discuss it, and just between try to come to a mutual understanding or see what's best. But you can't. I can't try to invoke the power of a guru. I'm just telling somebody, I think you're majoring the wrong subject in school, or you should change jobs, or I mean, certain things. There are times when people around us, and certainly a guru, can just see that you're harming yourself. And it's just obvious. It's not, there's really no mistaking it, that you're doing something which is not good for you. And so someone may tell you that. And so it doesn't mean, we can't go to the other extreme and say that, I mean, someone that cares about me and that may be a wise person may actually see things that are real. So I think there has to be balance. Like everything else, there has to be balance. You can't go too far to one side or the other. Yes?
Well, if you have the pure intention
Mm-hmm.
to be of service
Yes.
and to benefit another, but if you don't do it in the right way, it can be demanding and bossy and critical. So it sounds like from your talk that if this isn't done in a pure spiritual way, it can hurt the person that's demanding and in some respects damning the person that does certain things that they don't agree with.
Yeah, it's very true. Uh, Someone may, yeah, exactly as you put it.
Even though the motive is love.
Well, I would say that the motive may be partially love. I think that when there's really pure consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
then the tendency is to. I mean, it's possible. I suppose you could say that someone's acting out of pure love, but just got the facts wrong, or just doesn't have enough experience in that area. I suppose we can't. I mean, love doesn't make one omniscient. And so even if someone has pure love for you, they still may not be omniscient. And that's why I think it's when someone wields power in a relationship. It can be parents and children, it can be spouses, it can be teacher and student, just any relationship where someone has some power over the other person. We have to be very careful and remember that our experience and knowledge of the world is limited, and we can certainly speak with certainty about spiritual principles, but in the application to worldly situations, uh, yeah, we have to be careful. And for example, we may say to someone, I think this is best for you based on my experience and based on what I see here. I think this is best for you, and in saying that, I may be right. I'm not necessarily wrong. I may actually get it right, but we just have to. I think we just can't browbeat people and sort of try to bludgeon them into submission.
Yeah. My mother always used to say, "You may be right." I think it's classic.
Yes,
You
it
should
is.
always remember because it gives the other person grace.
Yeah, yeah,
I think this can tie in also to a little earlier when we were saying about how to the best, most efficient way to spread the Krishna consciousness or whatever you do understand, how you have to let the person come to the conclusion on their own, because
Socratic method.
yeah, when people are told what to do, they kind of want to reject it because I guess it depends. Every situation is different, but the same concept when you want to advise people, you have to find it in a way to do it where they can kind of feel like they come to the conclusion on their own.
Yeah, I would say that that's especially true nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
because in this age of just like unbridled narcissism. But it's sort of true always. And there are cases where people say like, I just need someone to explain this to me.
Right.
And there are other cases where people are, God help you if you try to tell somebody something. So I would say that, but what you said is certainly true in many cases. So I think that the best course then would be that advising people, we have to take the time to understand something about them and just talk to them a little bit and find out what the market will bear.
The soul. Each of us have our own soul, and we're coming from our own consciousness, and to inflict ours on theirs, the two will never meet.
Mm-hmm.
It has to,
Unless,
it has to come
no,
together.
that's certainly true. As you stated it, if I'm trying to get someone else to take my view, because everyone's unique, it may not work. If, for example, you actually have the good fortune to be empowered, so that, and I don't mean this in any outlandish, extremist way, but let's say God is speaking through you.
Yes.
It may be a case where you speak to someone and they recognize that you're speaking the truth. And that, so in that sense, I think the more I really care about the other person, and the more I don't see myself as above the other person. Even, a guru that really thinks I'm above my disciples is not really a guru. Technically, the guru may be in a more advanced state spiritually, but the symptom of a more advanced state is you don't think you're better than other people. And so, if I have enough respect for the other person to really care about what they think and what they need and what they're able to take right now. And so when people, if you're talking to someone, let's say, someone has the good fortune to speak with Shamali, let's say you're speaking to someone and they see that you're not trying to lord it over them, you're not trying to, have power over them. You're just a nice person who's, cares about them, and you listen to what they're saying. And let's say you, based on your experience, based on Krishna helping you in the heart, in a kind way, you just speak the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And people realize it's not your truth, it's just the truth. Like, let's say someone stops and says, how do I get to UCLA from here? And I tell them, it's not my truth, that's just the way you get there. It's that way, and it's not just that way for me. And so if we are speaking something which is really true, it's not just my truth, and we leave them enough space, as we were saying, to take that in their own way, in their own life, based on their life experiences and whatever. Because there's danger. It's like I always say, on every road, there's danger. You can go off the road on either side. And so one side of the road is just basically trying to push people around, and tell them what to do or this or that, or you got to see things as I see them. But the other danger is slipping into, and this is a danger which the New Age movement is sort of blind to, and that is slipping into a type of irrational subjectivism, where everyone just has their own truth, which is absurd. Because, do we all agree we're in Santa Monica right now? If everyone just had their own truth, you couldn't have legal systems, you couldn't have law and order, you couldn't have anything. You couldn't have life. So, and if there is a God, sure, everyone sees God in their own way, just as everyone sees the parents in their own way. But there are certain objective facts about the parents. There may be 3 or 4 siblings that all see the parents in their own way, but there's a whole huge body of objective facts about the parents totally independent of what any particular child thinks or sees. And so we don't want to go into extreme subjectivism or sort of abusive authoritarianism.
But would you say some truths, like I know there's the more concrete truths, but would you say some are more abstract, so what might be true for one person at that certain stage in their life wouldn't be true for someone
An
else?
example, please.
Spiritual or material truth?
No, either one, because there's some truths that are more.
Give an example. Give an example.
Think of an example.
I have an example that Urmila Dasi gave that's just material, but it kind of illustrates the point. Is that when you're teaching a child mathematics, first you teach them that you can't subtract numbers from zero, that are less than. You can't subtract. You can't have negative numbers. You can't subtract,
5
3
from 4.
from 1. For
Okay.
example.
Okay.
But then when they advance more in their intelligence, then they learn that they can have negative numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And she was using that as an example to describe that people do have different stages in their consciousness and their ability to understand complexity in spiritual life.
Right.
Of
So
course.
it's like someone may be going through a problem, and if like I tried to give someone advice and I'm not an elevated being who's speaking through God, then I'll give them advice that's true for me, but not necessarily true for them. So for me, that advice might be my truth, but
Well, give an example.
Okay. Let's say one of my friends
Maybe
having.
performing austerities, perhaps, like for someone maybe yes,
Yeah, let's say
wake up early and
in
chant
their own
60
spiritual
rounds.
life, they might be going through things that I don't quite understand because maybe I haven't gone through. So I'll give them my own version of my truth that is applicable to me and the stage that I'm in, but it might not necessarily be for them. Because, like, I guess
I get. Okay. Here's one thing I would say right away. I think we need to maybe adjust the language a little bit because, like, my truth, your truth is a typical modern way of speaking, which really is, I think. I know what the words mean.
maybe not necessarily truth, it's opinions because.
Or I would just say what's practical for me.
Right, that's
For
a-
example, you could say at a certain point in my life, I dropped out of school, or I went to school and it really helped me. Therefore, you should drop out of school or go to school, for example.
Right.
So that's just what worked for me at a particular time.
Right, that's what I was getting at. Because I guess I've had like different people like in your life. They might at that point in their life they might have a certain opinion, but then it'll change whatever works for them, and their opinion might change. So they might tell you, I don't know. Like I remember when we moved here, one of our friends was like, "Oh, I don't like Santa Monica, whatever. It's not good." And now she's moving here. She's like, "It's great." And so you never want to like. I guess those aren't truths. Those are just what works for people at their stage.
Or opinions,
Well,
yeah.
like in ISKCON, like in the beginning, and when I joined at least, going to college was not seen as a good thing, right? Where it was like, no, I couldn't read anything unless that it was Prabhupada's books, and well, but especially college was seen like, oh, it's illusion, right? And then the gurus who preach that way, they end up going to college. So
Yo nunca predicaba así.
right, sorry,
I don't think I ever preached that way. I was the first one to actually break
right, you were the first to break
the barrier,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's kind of what I was trying to.
Yeah,
That's a
but
good
that-
example.
So
I
you
didn't
see
think
how
of it.
many disciples maybe didn't go to because their leaders were
Right.
pushing against it, and then maybe they missed the boat, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah, yeah.
so things
Therefore,
change.
I think the important issue here is that we have to be intelligent and mature enough to know the difference between eternal, immutable spiritual principles like there's a God and God is in our heart, and even some details about God. It's not that everything specific is subjective, which is another great contribution of modern culture, but eternal, immutable principles and just circumstances.
Right.
Like in my, so there is a type of vanity in thinking that all the practical details of my life can be universalized for humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So to think that, and therefore we have to make that distinction. So I may say to someone that I like or don't like this for these reasons, but that's me.
Right.
Someone else may have completely other needs or preferences. So I think it's a type of vanity of thinking that my own needs or desires or preferences are somehow universal.
superior.
Yeah, they're universal. They apply to everyone. Everyone should. Yeah, these are the real tastes. These are the real preferences. I mean, we all slip into that somewhat. I, find it mystifying. Some people don't get Baroque music, but anyway. So I mean, we all have that. But then again, I know myself because of the line of work I'm in, the spiritual thing. I have to be circumspect. I have to be disciplined and realize that I have my private life, my personal tastes in music or literature or places to live or weather or this or that. And those are just my personal tastes. And I have to be conscientious and disciplined and not mix those with advice I'm giving. I have to be sure that when I'm talking to people, for example, for me to invite people to a spiritual program and then start trying to persuade you or impose upon you my personal preferences in subjective things would be inappropriate. It would be not doing my duty properly.
And earlier you had said we talked about how to give criticism or advice without offending people. Now, how about how to reject advice without offending people? Like, let's say
She's
let's say
smart, isn't she?
It comes from a spiritual authority, and maybe you feel that they're giving you their own opinion, not necessarily a spiritual truth. And how would you go about telling them? Well,
You could always say what in Hollywood, like if you see someone else's work in Hollywood and you don't like it so much, and they say, "How do you like what I did there?" And then you say, "It was interesting."
My dad tells me that all the time. Practically all my stories, he says interesting, but it has different intonations. Interesting
Yes.
or interesting.
I would say that obviously you have to be true to your own best understanding.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to reject something just because someone else told you to do it, because what if they're telling the truth? Like when people say to me, like, what do you do when people criticize you? The first thing I always do is I try to understand if it's true or not.
Right.
If someone criticizes me, even someone who I know is ill-intentioned, I don't even think maybe is a good person, and they criticize me, the first thing I do is try to honestly understand whether it's correct or not. Because if someone is that criticism valid? If it is, then I try to make appropriate adjustments. If it's not valid, whether it's coming from someone that I like or don't like, or I respect or don't respect, if someone criticizes me, that's the main point to me. It's not about me, it's about the truth of the matter.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is, sorry, go ahead.
Well, but to honor their truth.
I don't think they have a truth. You see that's the thing. I don't agree with I think there's a certain way of talking nowadays, which is not really. I feel it's too self-indulgent.
Well,
for example, let's say someone says to me, just give an example. Let's say someone says to me that, "Oh, you're just doing this because you want to make money," which is, if you want to make money, don't do what I'm doing. But so now, if someone says that, or you're just doing this for some selfish reason, and let's say I know in my heart that's not correct.
Mm-hmm.
That's not their truth. That's their illusion.
Or their opinion.
Oh, it's just their illusion. They're just wrong. In other words, certain people all of us can be, including myself, about certain things. We can just get it wrong. And so if I'm just wrong, like for example, let's say I criticize someone, and we've all had this experience, and I find out later that was an unfair criticism. So I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't my truth at the time. It was my mistake. And so...
It's like a butchery of the word truth.
Well, yeah, I think, but nowadays there's so much... I'll tell you what I'll tell you what I think is happening from a historical perspective. The world has gone through, especially the Western world, has gone through so much bad religion.
Mm-hmm.
And by bad religion, I mean fanatical, offensive, oppressive. I mean, to tell someone else your religion is evil, it's like, that's rude.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's say the person's not a terrorist or something. It's just someone worshiping God in their own way. And so to tell them that you're wrong, it's bad, you're worshiping a false God, when you're actually just worshiping God, that's evil. I mean, that is more. It's terrible. It's offensive. It's abusive. Huh?
Disrespectful.
Yeah, abusively disrespectful. And so, because the Western world, just in the last few centuries, kind of emerged out of this stranglehold that this bad religion had on the culture. Naturally, it's because nature balances. Culture's gone to the other extreme, where no one's ever wrong about anything, unless someone says that some people are wrong. That's the only way you can be wrong is to say that some people are wrong. And so there's this like I think this like extremely sensitive, extremely walking on eggs way of talking about things, like where everyone just has their truth. But I think it's just I think the real truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
I think it's to be true to yourself, is the bottom line. Because, if, for instance, if I was trying to help someone,
Right.
but I have my truth about their situation, but that's not going to help them. What's going to help them is for them to see the truth of their situation.
However, I don't.
I can bring what I have
Right.
to the table.
But I'm trying to understand what you mean. You have your truth about their situation.
No,
Because if you're not in a situation,
I'm in a totally different world. I'm sorry.
No, but what I mean to say is, let's say, for example, someone, like I always say, the only thing worse about the only when you get sick, the only thing worse than the illness is all the advice you get. And so let's say, for example, that someone is ill and their friends are giving them advice about what you need to do. I don't think that like they have a truth, like your truth, their truth, someone else's truth. I think it's just a question of what are the facts of the matter.
But how do they feel about it? I think the person has to understand how they feel about their own situation.
But they may be wrong. For example,
Yes, definitely.
yeah. So therefore, it's not a truth. It's just it's a mistaken opinion. For example, there were times when I was ill, and some people advised me you should take B12. And I said, nah, I don't want to take B12. Then it turns out I did need B12. So back then, when I said, nah, I don't want to take vitamins, it wasn't my truth. It was my mistake. And so I think nowadays, what's happened in the world is that ontology or just the facts of life have been subordinated to psychology. So that because you should never say that someone made a mistake because it might harm their self-esteem,
right.
therefore everyone just has their truth. But people actually, they make mistakes. And so, of course, obviously you can go to the other extreme and you can offend people and you can discourage them and you can all that.
I think that's a hard.
Isn't that where we started? We started out by being critical of others to the point of being hurtful,
Right?
and we hurt ourselves.
True.
So by being respectful of the other person, and being loving and listening, they can heal themselves. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm totally from a different world.
No, but I mean that sometimes happens. That was, Socrates certainly had a lot of success with that method. But let's say, for example, I mean, there are cases where people stubbornly won't listen to good advice. For example, I know. For example, I know several people, unfortunately, because I'm part of a spiritual community. I just know thousands of people. I know several people. Actually, Steve Jobs, and I didn't know personally, but apparently he's in that list also, who died of curable diseases because they had a fanatic allegiance to or belief in natural medicine. Now, Emily is a very good naturopath doctor, and so I think naturopathy has a lot of good stuff. I mean, they help a lot of people, and they know a lot. At the same time, as Emily will say, you need different things for different situations. And so when people, let's say, stuck to their, no, I'm going to do this way, and their intention was not to go down with the ship. Their intention was to live. They wanted to live. That was their real intention. And yet they made poor choices and therefore died. So I don't see how their mistaken choice was their truth. There's nothing true about it. It was a mistake. And so I think we have to be moderate And we can't subordinate truth to politeness. So it's like the real point is not to get at the truth. The real point is just to be polite. I mean, I know that we should be, I mean, I agree with you. We should be polite. We shouldn't hurt people. We shouldn't impose things on people. And sometimes, for example, I learned from my teacher and Prabhupada, and he enlightened me. I mean, not that I claim to be a great enlightened soul, but he taught me so much. He totally transformed my life, completely transformed my life from just being just a 20-year-old California hedonist to actually, making something of myself. And so he just told it like it is. He wasn't shy. He was a pure soul. He didn't, there's no question of offending me, but he just told it like it is. It's this and it's not that. And that's what I needed. And that's what worked for me. And so, I mean, some people may be so sensitive that you have to just really always, you could never really tell them anything directly. And you have to just sort of, in a very tentative way, suggest things and let them discover it. Yeah. But there are people who are not so, let's say, easily offended and who just want someone to tell me the truth straight out.
I think that.
Well, I mean, I'm saying I know myself. Like when I talk to people, a lot of times I'll have experience with someone saying, well, I don't want to offend you, but, and to me, I just want to know what you think. I mean, just it's either right, I'll listen and I'll make my best judgment on it, but just tell me what you think it is. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so I think we should, I absolutely agree, we should respect everyone. Absolutely, we should respect everyone. Everyone is part of God. We should really try hard not to offend anyone, not to discourage anyone. And yet, people hold a lot of false views. For example, some people believe that that there's absolutely nothing wrong with anyone without any background check. Just anyone can walk in and buy, an automatic assault weapon, and the person may be psychotic, the person may have a criminal record, but we don't care about that. Just go buy your assault weapons, and that's their truth. No, that's not their truth. That's their delusion. And the solution is, like, every teacher in America should, be armed to the teeth. I mean, can you imagine a society in which, and what if a teacher goes crazy and starts shooting the kids? It's just, the idea, so I mean, these things are crazy. Or if someone thinks their truth is that even if I destroy the environment, even if I destroy society, I have a God-given right to make money. If I'm producing video games, or if I'm producing television programs, and science, not wacky science, but reliable science shows that children exposed to this level of violence and this type of violence are damaged. They're damaged in very dangerous ways. But I want to make money. And that's my truth. Or I'm going to blow up a school bus. What I just read, where was it? Afghanistan, Pakistan, where someone, some group just attacked a school. They just went into a school and started shooting people as a political statement. But that's their truth. So that language of dignifying everyone's opinion about everything as a truth, I think, needs to be reined in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if truth's the right word.
Yeah.
I live very small thoughts. Yes,
well, you're a good person, and
with one-on-one with others.
No, but you're
to bring out their best and to heal them and to bless them.
Well, you're a very good person, and so you probably.
The way to get to that is how do they really feel, not how I feel, but how do they really feel. So that
I agree with you.
And then I can bring my knowledge to their feeling.
I absolutely agree with you. No, you're a very good person, and I'm sure you deal with good people. And I agree that before advising someone, you have to find out.
I have to listen.
Absolutely, and we agree, because before I'll dare to advise someone, I really have to feel that I know them, and then it's just advice, just saying, well, this is how I see it. What do you think? But yeah, so you're a good person dealing with good people, but there's some strange things out there.
No weapons involved.
And I think there's just so much concern with how you present whenever you try and advise someone nowadays. There's so much like psychology that goes into it and how to say it, because I think people's first notion when they hear criticism, they don't want to accept it. There's a lot of self-pride, so you want to reject it. So then nowadays there's a whole psychology of how to talk to people, because I know even, I guess for myself, whenever like even my mom, she wants to give me constructive criticism, my first thing is say no, but, and I want to defend myself. So like, even if I know inside that I'm wrong, I still want to defend myself, you know, like no, it's automatic. I always say no, the first response. So then I think, like you said, it's on an individual basis, we have to be open within ourselves to hear the truth and then that we're wrong.
Yeah.
Because like you said, Srila Prabhupada told you like this is the way it is, and it wasn't offensive, but you were probably more open-minded and open to change within yourself, which a lot of people aren't. I think that's the problem. They're closed off.
You know, I agree with you and with Edie that I'm all for technique. Like whatever it takes to make the medicine go down.
How about
Yeah,
just
yeah.
loving the person enough to listen to them without love?
Yeah, because you have to really care about the person. If you really care, but so I'm all for technique that'll make it work.
I don't think love is technique.
Well, love. Well, how should I put it? When I love someone, then I take the time and trouble to figure out, to try to think about how to, because I care about the person. You know, it's because of love. You take the time to get to know the person. You really take the time to think about what's the best way to present this. Because I frankly, when people come to me and say, "I just love you," but they don't know anything about me and they just start talking, it's like, if you love me, then maybe you should love me enough to know who I am. So, I think love means that you act in a certain way. It's you know it leads you to act appropriately. By the way, we're going to serve out the spiritual food, which
Very good.
Indra and her daughter very, very kindly made for us. And so while we're eating, if you have any other,
Use the restroom real quick?
well, let me think about it. Yeah, okay. But thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure.
you for having